Hey, this is a video message for JP Sears. So howdy JP, and anybody who isn't JP, feel free to A, watch this video, and B, see if you can get it in front of JP one way or another. I've seen and appreciated a whole bunch of your videos, and I wanted to do this video message not to really criticize or condemn anything you've said, but to point out a piece that I think you might be missing. You do a great job of completely mocking a whole bunch of the insanity coming out of the control freak left and all that, which is fabulous. I appreciate all that. I mean, I'm sure there's things I can find to nitpick about and maybe disagree about, but who cares? For the most part, I've been entertained and totally appreciate a bunch of the work you've done. Now, I do note that you seem to fall into the pattern of thinking that the political left and the political right and the spectrum in between is kind of all the choice we have. That's what the options are. So when you point out the insanity of the left, it comes across, and sometimes you actually say that you support the right and support Trump, at least in certain ways, in certain categories. And again, that's understandable. And the problem is that when the choices are which jackboot do we want on our throats, people think that opposing that one requires being the other one. And I'm sure you've actually been on the receiving end of people assuming you're totally a Trumpite, right-wing extremist, Nazi or whatever, because you criticize Biden's insanity or the political left. And I'm sure at the same time, you've been bashed for being too leftist when you criticize anything on the right, which seems to happen less these days because right now the left is in power and they're pushing their insanity more obviously and loudly at the moment. The trouble is to praise and support somebody for bashing something that deserves bashing is kind of fine and good, except if you support what they're doing just because they're against that, that doesn't end well. In fact, if you look at pretty much every famous tyrant in history, they got to where they were by rightfully condemning and bashing some other administration, some other regime, and the evil crap that those other regimes and administrations were doing. Incidentally, this is true of Biden and Trump. Both of them only got support because they pretended to be against what the other side was doing. I mean, Biden, who on earth would support that at all unless they were really, really scared of Trump? And who would pick Trump as their favorite creepy guy to be on the throne unless the alternative was Hillary or Biden or whoever? So, but not just them, but literally every tyrant in history. Mao rose to power. Stalin, Lenin rose to power. Hitler rose to power, rightfully criticizing bad things that were being done by other regimes to the people. So the fact that somebody rightfully condemns nasty things going on today or nasty things being done by the other side doesn't mean that the solution is to give them power and put them on the throne. And history has shown that over and over and over and over again. Supporting someone because they're critical of a currently tyrannical regime doesn't at all mean they wouldn't just make a slightly different tyrannical regime. But most people think those are the options. Well, you have the political left and the right and the moderates, and then you might sort of have something called libertarian, kind of sort of, that half the time pretends to have principles and pretends not to the other half of the time, and they don't seem to have any chance of winning anyway, so whatever. So people choose from this spectrum of control freaks and argue over, well, who should be sitting on the throne? And the thing that prompted me to finally make this video was a t-shirt you were wearing in a recent video that says legalize freedom, which the general sentiment I'm all in favor of. Trouble is, it's impossible. You can't legalize freedom. Actual freedom is never, ever ever legal. Now, you can have freedom in certain areas in certain ways. Like, okay, the government won't rob you for doing that particular thing, or won't violently attack you for having that particular habit. Like, if drinking alcohol is your habit of choice, government right now won't violently attack you. In the days of alcohol prohibition, they would violently attack you. If your habit happens to be something, like if your habit happens to be marijuana, well, in some places they'll attack you, and in other places they won't attack you, which shows how moral and consistent government is. But the idea of legalizing freedom never ever happens. Because what is legality? What is a legal system? It is the dictates issued by a ruling class, by a government. Now, we pretend that our government serves us and the Constitution makes them our servant, and lots of propaganda and rhetoric that I think you understand is BS. Start to finish. They don't serve us. They don't work for us. If somebody works for you, you can say, you're fired, get lost. Well, try to tell the IRS or DEA or ATF or the local police. Try to tell them you're fired, go away, your services aren't required anymore. See how well that goes for you, and you'll find out servant government is just mythology we were taught to get us to put up with more crap than we would have from a king who just says, I have the right to rule you because I said so. And by the way, under the US Constitution, the colonists here, who then became citizens of a new great country, were less free than they were even under King George III, because the propaganda of the Constitution was, well, now you have a say. Now it's a constitutional representative republic. Well, constitutional representative republics have been the most tyrannical and murderous regimes in history. You can look up the Constitution of Red China, of the Soviet Union, of North Korea, of the Weimar Republic, which turned into Nazi Germany completely constitutionally, because they had an article that said, in times of emergency, we can suspend all those civil rights and stuff, because we don't really need them if there's an emergency. And you've seen similar patterns here, even without an article in our Constitution saying that. Our Constitution. The point is, having a Constitution and letting people vote isn't at all a guarantee that the system will be at all just, or have anything to do with freedom, or will be at all legitimate. When you talk about legalizing something, you're talking about asking the ruling class to give you permission to do certain things. But the ruling class will never give you permission to all the way be free. They never have anywhere in the world at any point in history. Why the hell would they gravitate towards positions of power in order to not exert that power over you? So you can have candidates and parties and say, I will rob you far less. I will reduce taxes. They're not saying we're not going to rob you. You won't actually have economic freedom. They're basically saying, we won't whip you as hard, we won't rob you as much. And because your choices are this guy and this guy, you're supposed to go, rah, 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 that guy is pro-freedom because he's going to rob me less. Not, he's not going to rob me at all. Of course he's going to rob you. Why would he try to get into that position? Why would he run for office if not to use the power and the force over you and everybody else that office gives him? He's trying to be your ruler. This has been the case forever. And the fact that they use the silly rhetoric about, oh, we represent you and it's a representative republic and we're doing the will of the people. All the crap they say to get away with bossing people around and stealing their stuff doesn't change the fact that it's still a ruling class and that freedom is never legal. It can't ever be legal. And the bottom line, I'll try to make this short so you bother to watch this video. As long as you're asking for freedom to be legalized, you're doomed. First of all, it's never going to happen. It's never happened anywhere in the world at any point in history. Because for actual freedom to be legalized, the ruling class would have to come out and say, we've decided we're not taking your money, we're not controlling you, we're not doing anything that you guys don't have the right to do, which means we're not a ruling class anymore. So why did we bother running for office just to be normal people? who have the right to do what normal people have the right to do. Because normal people have the right to organize and cooperate and do amazing things on a voluntary basis. What they don't have is the right to forcibly dominate each other, which is the right that every government claims. So never has that happened, and never will it happen, that you will get freedom legalized. But the bigger problem is that if you are waiting for the masters to give us permission to be free, you're already doomed. When you're asking for freedom to be legalized, you are asking the lawmakers, the people who claim the right to rule, to write down on paper, you're now free. That is as ridiculous as, slaves in the 1850s petitioning their master to tell them they're allowed to go now, instead of just running away. If you're a slave and you really think you need the permission of the master, that it's immoral for you to be free unless and until the master tells you you're allowed to, you're already a slave inside your own head. Doesn't even matter what the master says, because you believe it's up to somebody else whether you're allowed to be free. Well, if you're pushing for legalizing freedom, that implies that you believe it is up to government whether you're allowed to be free. And we need them to legislate something. We need them to repeal this or pass this or give us their holy written permission to be free human beings. The problem is not just that that is never in a billion years going to happen. It's that if that is your attitude, you are already the obstacle to you being free, because you already believe you need the permission of a ruling class to be free, which means you're not even free inside your own head. So I'll cut it short there. I happen to know that some people I know have already given you copies of my book, The Most Dangerous Superstition. I'm sure you get tons of unsolicited stuff. I'm sure you have time to look at and read about 0% of it. If you can't find it and you want to read it, I'd be happy to send you a free copy of the book. If you can't find the one that I know other people gave me because they sent me pictures of them handing you my book, The Most Dangerous Superstition. But I would strongly urge you to read it, because as much as I love your criticism of all the problems that statism and authoritarianism is currently the root of right now, the solution is not to put a different guy on the throne. The solution, as radical and extremist as it sounds, is don't have a throne. Have people interact like grown-ups, no masters and no slaves. And I know that's way outside of what most people ever hear in the media and what most people ever think about. But I would ask you to consider the fact that all the individual issues that you rightfully point out and you rightfully talk about and you rightfully criticize, they all come not from just the corruption of certain politicians. They all come from the belief in the minds of the normal people that we have some obligation to obey these crooks, that their word is law, that they are a rightful authority and have the legitimate moral right to tell us what to do. And until people outgrow that superstition, we're just going to keep going through the cycle of bickering over who should be on the throne and complaining about who's there and putting a new crook on the throne, going around in circles forever until people realize the throne doesn't matter. Let's not have anybody on it. Let's not have a throne. So those are my 2 cents. I hope you read the book, and I hope you have a good day. And otherwise, keep up the good work, because I love to see you bashing and criticizing all the manifestations of authoritarianism. I just wish you would look at the root of all of it, because the root of all of it is the belief in government and political authority. And until that root's gone, we just keep doing the same stupid, violent crap that humanity has done for millennia. I want that to stop, and I believe you want that to stop. So I hope you look into it.